Based on present polling averages from all 50 states, this video will show the electoral map for 2024. The last averages will be these ones. Not going to be updated after today. We only have 2 days left until the election. Essentially, all the significant new polls have already been published. This is thus quite it. After 4 years of reviewing these polls, this will be the last time we go over them to find Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's positions on the route to 270 electoral votes. We will thus simply jump right into it, beginning on the West Coast in Washington, where Kamala Harris leads by 22%, quite similar to Biden's margin of victory from past year. The state will turn to be pure blue. On Oregon, though, we only have one poll from Hoffman Research. Though it is a Republican internal, Harris still shows leading by just 5. Although this is rather alarming, in terms of margins, the vice president is probably going to be in good shape. Anything over 15 is solid, 5 to 15 is probably, 1 to 5 is lean, any margin less than 1% will cause tilt. Although Joe Biden won the Golden State by 29.24 years ago, down in Kamala Harris's native state of California, she is actually ahead by just 23.7. Again, this is Kamala Harris's native state. She was not only California Attorney General, but also a U.S. Senator from California for 4 years prior to vice presidential appointment. Nevada comes next. We have our first swing state here. This comes first of the 7. Obviously, the other ones are Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Now, given Donald Trump leads by 1% on average, the Nevada race is quite fascinating. 2 recently conducted polls have placed Trump ahead by 6. For Democrats, these are indeed shocking margins. Though they consistently overestimate support for Democratic candidates, the last New York Times poll does have Harris leading by 3. Nevada has been rather competitive generally over the past few months, though. Basically, here it has been close between Harris and Trump since Joe Biden withdrew. However, given just 2 days to go, it does seem that Trump has taken a slight lead in a state no Republican has not won since 2004. And thus Nevada will be lean Republican with a 1-point lead in favor of Trump. Arizona will also be quite fiercely competitive. Here, Donald Trump leads at 2.9%. Given that Joe Biden visited Grand Canyon State just 4 years ago in 2020, this is shockingly high margin. Arizona was won by him by 0.3%. Since no Democrat nominee had won Arizona going all the way back to 1996, this was a major triumph for the party. Biden failed North Carolina, but he managed to turn Arizona around somehow. But today, Trump seems destined to quickly bring the state back under control. He carried it almost 4 points back in 2016. Over the whole election cycle, polls taken in Arizona have usually supported Trump. And his lead has simply gotten smaller as the election draws near. Arizona will thus also be inclined toward the former president. Proceeding now to Colorado and New Mexico, we have 2 states Joe Biden carried by double-digit margins from 2020. Colorado comes close to 14 points. New Mexico by close to 11. Kamala Harris leads Colorado today just at 11.5. And this pertains to 2 Democratic internal polls as well. These polls thus clearly exaggerate the vice presidential support. She is most likely winning by less than 10 in reality. But Colorado is probably blue on our map based on the polling average. Though just barely, New Mexico will also be likely for the vice president. She leads at 6.7%, right above the 5-point cutoff. The performance of Kamala Harris in New Mexico has not been outstanding. She is winning just half of Biden's margin from the previous election. However, given more and more Hispanic voters choosing the Republican Party, New Mexico has generally been trending to the right, thus this isn't too shocking. Still, Democrats will be able to hang on to New Mexico for now. It will be most likely blue. Now turning our attention to Texas. For Trump, this is a massive prize. He must win this state by at least 6 points if he is to remain competitive elsewhere on the map. Though polls indicated he would only win by 1, the former president now won the Lone Star State by 5.6% in 2020. Based on polls, Trump leads today at 7.2%. With the most recent New York Times and Santa College poll, he is the obvious favorite, surpassing Harris by an amazing double-digit margin. The Lone Star State is most certainly going to be red, since Trump's performance this time has been far better than that of the last election. Should the polls understate him once more, as they most certainly will, Trump stands to win by at least 10 points or more. These states will now be located in the middle of the nation here out of the path. Given their last two cycles, they are all clearly going to support Donald Trump. Solid red Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, Kansas, and Oklahoma. In Nebraska, the state at large, as well as its 1st and 3rd districts, will be publicly safe. In the 2nd district, though, we do have a rather more competitive race. This is so since the 2nd district only covers Omaha and its environs. That makes the area rather urbanized. On average, Kamala Harris leads by a 10-point margin. This is mostly, though, because the district lines now differ from their 2020 counterparts. With Joe Biden carrying the 2nd district by just under 7 points, the district most definitely favors Democrats far more than it did 4 years ago. Nebraska's 2nd district will hence most likely be blue. After that, candidates will find Alaska and Hawaii to be rather safe. Alaska solid red, Hawaii solid blue. We are not going to focus higher, up to the Midwest. The decision on the election will truly be made here. Trump will inevitably rule the Sun Belt, as everyone is aware. He will therefore have to win one of the 3 former blue wall states, of Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania, if he is to get 270 electoral votes. If Kamala Harris is to have any hope of being chosen the 47th president, she must win all 3. We will thus start in Minnesota, where Kamala Harris's performance just does not match what we observed from Joe Biden 4 years ago. He carried Minnesota with a 7.1% coefficient. And he wasn't running alongside the literal governor of the state. Currently running with Kim Walz as her running buddy, Kamala Harris does not even lead in Minnesota by 5 points. Her head is by 3% according to the most current Rasmussen polls. Her leading in our Minnesota Post poll was 3 as well. Kamala Harris's performance in the running mate's hometown has been rather poor, really. She never guided with more than 7 points. She is really not going to do well elsewhere on the map, and particularly in the Midwest, if she cannot even surpass Biden in the state of her vice presidential candidate. She should particularly worry about Michigan and Wisconsin as well as Pennsylvania. For now, though, it will be lean blue only from Minnesota. Kamala Harris wants not this but another place. Down in Iowa, Donald Trump has indeed been under some pressure here. Our current Ann Seltzer poll is online. This is the one attracting a lot of interest. It was done with the Des Moines Register and shows Harris at 3%. Still, this poll reveals grave issues. Just with the crosstabs, you will find that abortion and not issues like the economy or immigration rank highest among the concerns of voters. That is absolutely fascinating to observe and clearly deviates from what we typically learn from voters all around the nation. But this new Emerson poll, taken just 1 day later, more fairly captures the true sentiment in Iowa. Trump winning by 10% would not be shocking at all. Simply said, consider what has transpired during the past 2 cycles. People felt in 2016 that Hillary Clinton had a decent chance in Iowa. She lost it almost double-digitally. People felt Joe Biden would do far better in 2020. He might even win Iowa totally, or just get within a 1 or 2 point mark. Some people were absolutely claiming that, but he hardly improves and loses the state by 8.2%. As Iowa continues to move to the right, Trump is expected to win there today with his biggest margin yet. For now, though, Iowa is most likely red-based, just on the polling average. Kamala Harris is next up in Wisconsin. With some of the new polls showing her just a little more, she has taken a very minor lead. Harris was up 2 in the New York Times. Marist College Harris was up 2 as well. Over the past few weeks, Trump really stepped forward. Late October, he was ahead essentially. Kamala Harris is in a somewhat better position now as we enter November, but still far worse than in August and September, when it was almost a lock she would have won Wisconsin. But Kamala Harris's current dilemma stems from our observations of 2016 and 2020. Hillary Clinton led at 5.5% 8 years ago. She went completely without Wisconsin. Lead by 6.6%. Joe Biden 4 years ago in 2020, he barely 0.63% won the state. Wisconsin polls have consistently greatly overstated Democrats. For Donald Trump, then Harris being ahead by 0.3% is not really significant. But Wisconsin's status will be till the blue for the map's intended uses. Michigan comes next, another state where Kamala Harris's performance has slightly improved over the past week. Though the most recent New York Times poll shows a tie, she now leads by 0.6%. Examining polling and results from 2016 and 2020 reveals once more a great disparity. Clinton led by 5 in 2016, lost totally to Wolverine State. Joe Biden led by 5.1 in 2020. His winning margin was just 2.8, and so definitely yet also with great grain of salt, take polling in Michigan. Generally speaking, they have always undervalued Donald Trump. Looking at where we were just 1 week ago, Trump was in rather decent shape. He led most of October, but like in Wisconsin, the election year's Harris is in a rather better position. Though based on just the numbers right now, Michigan is also going to be tilted blue. Thus ultimately this race could go either way. Though for their respective candidates, Illinois and Indiana will be solid states. Of course, Illinois is solid for Harris. Indiana solid for Trump is different. In Ohio, nevertheless, we do have a rather more competitive race. Leading by 6.9% is Donald Trump. Given that he led just 1.6 in 2016, this is still rather large margin, and in 2020 he led with 0.2. Considering that it was an Obama state in both 2008 and 2012, Trump has performed quite well in Ohio over the past 2 election cycles, even if both times he carried the Buckeye state by 8 points or more. Kamala Harris lacks opportunity to flip it in 2024. Iowa is going to stay red. Donald Trump most likely will prevail by a margin of at least 10 points. Ohio will thus probably be red, given the statistics. When all the votes are counted, it most likely won't be solid. Though he can surely get close, Trump's likely not going to win by 15 points or more. We had at last arrived in Pennsylvania. Everyone is discussing this state right now. The Keystone State will most certainly choose the next president, as we have known for rather some time. Looking at where both candidates are right now, Trump dominates the Sun Belt, but he will need one of the 3 upper Midwestern states to secure 270. Though this is most certainly still up in the air, Kamala Harris would excel in Wisconsin and Michigan. Although Donald Trump is going to win Pennsylvania first before it is 2 western neighbors, he can surely win these 2 states as well. And when considering Keystone State polling, Donald Trump finds himself in a rather strong posture. His leadership percentage is 0.3%. Indeed, this is a close margin. But Atlas Intel, the most accurate pollster from 2020, has Trump leading by 2. And the New York Times always supports the Democrats. They show the 2 contenders exactly tied. Pennsylvania poll results have always been rather close. Donald Trump and Joe Biden were neck and neck even prior to that catastrophe of a debate performance. Although Kamala Harris and Donald Trump followed a similar trend, it does seem that Trump will hang on to his lead given the election just 2 days away. Pennsylvania will hence be tilted red. Should Trump be successful in the Keystone State, Kamala Harris's road forward is much more limited. Proceeding now toward the Northeast, Kamala Harris leads by 17 points in New York. She truly battled to surpass a 15-point advantage, but her performance improves slightly over the course of the election. Kamala Harris leads by 16 on average then in New Jersey, too. Bob Menendez is still having an impact on Democrats, but as of right now, the Democratic Party is in a better position than it was a few months ago when New Jersey was deemed to be possibly competitive. While Harris is going to perform far better in Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, along with Joe Biden's home state of Delaware, Maryland, and the District of Columbia, New York, and New Jersey are just barely scraping by as solid blue states. Ascending now to New Hampshire and Maine, Kamala Harris is not particularly attractive in the Granite State where she resides with just 4%. From back in 2020, Joe Biden's almost 8-point margin of victory is half here. Actually, a fresh Rasmussen poll reveals the vice president leading by just 1, thus it could indeed go right to the wire. Polling in Maine has been absolutely horrible. Based on the state's overall average, Harris leads by roughly 11 to 12 points. This is clearly excellent, but it is also quite unrealistic. Kamala Harris is not going to surpass Joe Biden, who merely won Maine by 9.1. In Maine's 1st congressional district, Harris trails by 27 points. This is once more entirely illogical. Trump commands just 1% in the 2nd district. Once more, these figures are simply utterly erroneous. You really cannot believe the numbers in Maine, since Pan Atlantic and the University of New Hampshire are among the most liberal pollsters available. New Hampshire will be lean blue as of right now, though, which is rather reasonable. Polls taken in Maine clearly show too high support for the vice president. Maine is probably blue overall right now. The 2nd district leans red. The 1st district solid blue. Now descending into the south, this is where we will complete the map. Trump will rule this area, most of which. He will readily win Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and South Carolina. We then have 4 more rather competitive states left. Starting up top in Virginia, the vice president leads just 5.8%. She wants not here, but somewhere else. Musson Poll's most recent rest has her head barely 2 points. Her average barely half of Biden's margin from 2020 when he carried the state by 10.1%. With a Republican governor set for 2021, Virginia has been moving to the right. Democrats are therefore the minor favorites, even if they clearly have a lot to worry about here. Virginia will probably turn blue. Additionally, rather dominant in North Carolina, where he leads by 1.5%, is Trump. Though he lost by 1.3%, this is quite different from 2020, when the polling data projected a Biden triumph. Actually, North Carolina is the only one of the 7 battleground states Trump actually prevailed against the incoming president 4 years ago. He is definitely going to triumph North Carolina once more. Just study the poll distribution here. In practically every single one of them, he leads by quite noteworthy margins. Also, he has kept a lead in the polling average all through the 2024 cycle. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden never ever led in any sense. Trump is going to triumph in the Tar Heel state 3 times running. Trump ahead by just over 1%. North Carolina will be lean red. Down in Georgia, this is yet another state where Trump is just ruling. Harris won't be able to prevail, really. She cannot replicate Joe Biden's success from 2020, as he became the first Democrat to triumph over Peach State since 1992. Kamala Harris is going to lose Georgia. Thus, this race, which was the closest of the year, will be remembered as a fluke, even though Joe Biden's triumph is historic. Her polling average shows behind by 2.3%. Trump is behind just one current poll, which the New York Times conducted. Once more, they consistently produce the most left-leaning polls available. Harris is most likely losing by at least 2 if she is leading by 1. Georgia unquestionably supports Trump. Just consider how his lead has developed over the past few months, particularly as we approach the last half of October and arriving now into November. Though Georgia voted for Joe Biden by a very small margin 4 years ago, it is still fundamentally a Republican state with a generally conservative outlook. Trump will be reclaiming Georgia this time. It also will be lean red. Finally, and least importantly, Florida is the last state on our map to fill in. Looking at the polls, Trump is in a quite good position. It is the one that gets either Trump or Harris over 270. He leads with 8.5%. This is amazing. In comparison to what we observed in 2016 and 2020, Clinton scored 0.9% 8 years ago. She missed Florida by 1.2%. 2020 saw Joe Biden lead by 1.4%. He lost by 3.4% exactly. Therefore, the actual results differ greatly from the polling figures, and they consistently support Trump far more than the polls do. And today, if Trump is leading by almost 10 points, he might even reach that double-digit margin. But it is most likely Republican no matter what. Trump isn't down in Florida. It will be by his biggest margin ever, and he will readily win it a 3rd time. This is thus the electoral map for 2024 derived from final poll results from every single state. With 287 electoral votes, Donald Trump is on path for triumph. Kamala Harris, with 251. While Kamala Harris is only likely to hang on to Wisconsin and Michigan, Trump is going to turn Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania to ensure triumph. It is close. As they usually do, I now do expect these polls to somewhat overestimate Democrats. Trump will, of course, do far better than Iowa's lean margin of success. Additionally, he might possibly win Michigan and Wisconsin. Though I wouldn't be surprised if Virginia was more competitive as well. Right now, the polling results regularly show Trump ahead. He is positioned powerfully to reclaim the presidency. Though a win is a win, it is most likely not going to be by a landslide margin. Thank you so much for viewing. Right now, make sure you like, comment on, and subscribe for more material like this, heading up to the November 5th election.